In this video, we'll use geometry nodes to create a nice terrain. So we'll create some mountains. And for this, again, I will remove these objects here, select this one and create a new one here. Okay. So what we will do basically, in that one, we will use a grid that will be subdivided, and we will change the location of the vertices to create let's say some mountains. So let's go for this, and what we will do first of all, we'll add the grid. So let's add this grid here. Okay, you will have a grid just like this. Okay, maybe the size is too little, let's go to 14. You can just play with the size that you want. I put 14 or 15 might be good. Okay. And what we would like is something high with the subdivision here. So we'll put 512, okay, to have enough vertices to work with. Good. So the next one that we will use is a noise texture. So let's go for a noise texture. We will keep the group output here and the group input here if needed. For the noise texture, let's add, because you can add some textures as well, you have a noise texture here. And what we want to do with this noise texture is change here the position here into of the object. Okay. And we want to do that only into the z-axis, because we don't want to make it into the other axis. So what we will do, we'll add a set position over here, and you see that you have the offset into the z-axis. This is this that we want to change with our texture. But as you can see, we cannot change only the z-axis and plug something into that. We need to add another node, and this node is the XYZ, the combined XYZ like this. Like this, I can plug this to this and plug this to this, and it will change the geometry just like that. Okay. So quite simple for this. What I would like to do is play a little with the settings of the noise texture. So I will go for 4D here. Okay. I will just play with a scale at 0.4, not something big, just to have a basic scale like this. I will go with details totally like that. Okay. And for the roughness, the linearity, and the distortion, I will not play with it. I will just keep it like this. Okay. And what we can do into this, we can add a color ramp to manage that more visually. Okay. So if we add, let's say, a color ramp like that, okay, we can just change here the position, for example, to add just some mountains in some places, just like this. Okay. So let's say we would like to make something a little like that. We could add one maybe, okay, and put it there. And you can play like this with this kind of settings, just with this. Okay, so let's go here and play with the colors as well. I like this, okay. It's not that high, so to make it higher, we can play with math. And again, to do this, we can do this into the vector as well, not into the value. We can do this into the vector. So for doing this, we add a vector math. Let's go and plug this into this. And now I would like to use the multiply value, just like this, and add a value into this. If I don't add any value, it will not work. 1 will keep the same value, but if I multiply by 2, it will be higher, and we start to see a little kind of landscape here. Okay, so you can play with the different settings. Sometimes I like to play as well with the here rig multifractal, so I will just duplicate that just to show you another method here, and you can see directly the result. So that's what is good with this technique. Okay, here I will use the rigged multifractal for that one, increase the gain like at 50, something like this. You can see it create kind of rocky shapes here. That can be very interesting, okay? You can play with the details, increase the roughness, might look sometimes a little better, okay, in my opinion. And sometimes you can just invert the levels here, okay? So let's say I would like something rocky like this, maybe with less strains here. So I come back to this and make it a little less high. You can see that here, for example, if you want to go higher, you go like this. But if you want to go lower, you can manage this kind of shape, for example. And here you can just change the color and put it like that. And it will create kind of plateau of this kind of plateau shape. So it can be interesting in some ways, but here we'll just keep it as white, almost white, something like this. Okay, and you can see that here you have really interesting geometry as well. So to add some level of randomness, it can be good. And sometimes just mixing the two can be good as well. You can use different scales here. Okay, so let's play with that. I like that one. Okay, and we can mix the two just like this. You can add, for example, here, go into color mix. Okay, and you can mix the two, for example, with an add value, let's say. Okay, and you will have this kind of value now. That can be very good, and if you increase the multiply here, you will have something interesting as well. Okay, so you will have this kind of rocky terrain that works pretty well here. Okay, then after you just have to play with the different settings in case you want something higher or less high, depending of what you want here. Okay, but basically you can really have nice and interesting shapes. I would say that this looks good. It's not that bad. Okay, maybe the size of the scale might be a little too low, too high. So let's say 0.3 here and 0.1 here. High. This everything looks good, huh? When you play with that. So okay, let's play with the basic setting 0.2, 0.4, and here you have already very nice shapes. Okay. So what you can do, you can even add more here to create kind of plateau over there. And look at this, works pretty great, huh? So let's say we are happy with this. Good. Increase that a little, doesn't change that much. Yeah, this one is more interesting. Good, so we have already a nice setup here. So you see that to create a nice rocky shape, it can be very interesting. Now, if you want to increase the level of subdivision to have more definition, you can for sure, but it might be a little slow, so be careful with that. You see that it creates really more interesting shapes, but be careful with the grid here, the geometry. It might slow down your computer a little. Okay, so I can just click this, plug this into the geometry here. Good, and we can see the number of triangles here. It's a lot, you can see. So we'll just keep a basic setup with 512 to not have too much vertices into our view. And what we would like to do now is to change the scale, not the scale, but we would like to add some shader into that. Okay, so to do this, what we can do is just adding, for example, First of all, we will add a set shade smooth because for now it's not smooth. Okay, so we can do that directly here. Set shade smooth, just directly there. Okay, so we'll have this result now. And what we can do as well is set a material. By default, you can see that we don't have any shader here. Okay, and even if I add a shader over there and change the color, it doesn't change into the rendered view. It's because this is a specific thing for geometry node. We have to set the shader here. So let's call this landscape. Good. We have a landscape just like that. Okay, and now what we can do with this landscape is adding here set shader, set material. Where is it? The set material is here. Okay, we put it in the end and we choose the name of the shader landscape, and like this we have something red. Okay, it works. Good. So what we can do, we can just split this in two here, make a vertical split over there, and this one we will use the shader editor. So let's go there with the shader editor. Good. And we just have a basic shader. So what I will do into the layout, I will just find a nice terrain shader. Okay, just like this. Let's go into the asset browser and we will go into the polyheaven that we did download and install already together. So if we go to the textures here and go to the terrain, we will find a lot just like this. Okay, so what we can do is maybe add one just like that. Area rock 4 might work for this. So I just click and drag this. Now I should have something that looks not like I want, but I come back to the geometry node and now I can play with the right shader because here I don't want landscape but area rock. Okay, so by default it creates something a little crazy. It's because of the options here of the shader. So we can go here into the displacement settings, the settings here, and you can use bump only. Like this, it will create this kind of better orientation. What we can do as well is not use this for as UV, but we can use this as generated. So let's go there and click and drag this. Okay, and we will have already something interesting here. So what we just want to use now is the scale to change and add more definition into it. Okay, so maybe 5 might be good. What we want to do as well is to play a little with the settings to not only have a generic shader like that. So we can increase maybe this even at 10. We will see if we see too much the duplication. So maybe 7 might be okay. Okay, when you look at it like this, it will work very well, as you can see. But now what I would like is to play a little with the color here to add more interesting stuff. So what we will do, we will go into the shader and add a geometry here because we want to use a little trick. Quite easy, but works very well. So we will add a geometry here, a node like this. Okay. And what we can do with this geometry is find the normal here, and you will have this kind of result here. And with XYZ, so it will be separate, combine XYZ, I guess. No, it's a separate XYZ. That one. Good. So you can see that now everything that is that goes from the X value, so it's everything white into this axis, for example, okay? So me, what I would like is to use the separate XYZ and use the Z option. Like this, I will have this kind of result over there. So what I can do, I can change a little the scale here to make it a little less strong, maybe 0.5 or something like this. Don't put this too high, maybe 1 might be enough, okay? And now I can add a color ramp just to play with the settings. So let's go with a converter, color ramp, and change that. And you can see that now I can just use this to add more randomness into that texture, okay? So I can just click and drag like this, and we will see the result over there. So if you don't have any displacement here, like a scale at 0, you will have only the white parts like this that will look a little like snow. So it's good to not have too much. Maybe something like this might work better, okay? 0.2, it's okay in my case. So we can see like this a little like if there is snow, but we will not use it for snow. We will use it for adding some green parts into that. So what we will do, we will just add here a color mix, and we will mix the original texture, okay, with a color that will be greenish. And you can play with textures to make it even better, but let's go to a basic green like that, okay? So now if I have this factor, it's everything green. But if I click and put this factor like this, all these parts will be green, okay? And what I can do is add just a little of green, not a pure green like this. And to do that, I will just use this setting and just lower it a little, okay? You can see that now we have some greeny parts over there everywhere, okay? And just after you play with this setting to make it a little more sharp or less sharp if needed, I would say that this is a nice one. Good. And what we would like is that on top here of the mountains, maybe it's a little less greenish and maybe less saturated. So for this, we will just add a new one over there, okay? And we will play with the position here and with another separate XYZ. So let's go with the position and another separate XYZ. And basically what it will create in the end is something like that, okay? You will see the higher it is, whiter it is. So we will just use a multiply value here. We will just play with math, sorry. 2 can have a multiply. So we'll just play with a multiply value here and change this until we have the right setting. So we need a nice gradient between the top and the lower parts, okay? Now we can add another color ramp. And basically we want only the top. Yeah, something like that might look good, okay? And maybe, yeah, maybe a little whiter like this. And we could say that this here will be less saturated, so turns gray on top. So what we will do, we'll add here a color hue saturation value. And here in the end, we can play with the saturation, gray like this or totally saturated like that. So in the end, we would like to go with these settings here for the saturation. And what it will do by default is add everything turns gray except a little on the top. So we just have to play with the sliders. First of all, you have to invert the sliders, okay? And then after, you just play with the settings to see a little where it goes. You see that here, if I slide like that, I have the top of the mountains that look a little more grayish. And now it looks less repetitive as a texture, okay? So now I have a better overall shader that I can just plug the color here over there, and it looks far better. You can see here. Maybe this one has to be a little more here. Okay, and now we have something already that looks pretty cool. Okay, so as you can see, it's not that complicated to create with the geometry node setup over here. Anyway, I save this into the source files. In the next video, we will see how to distribute things into a plane like that. So how to distribute things a little like the Bagapire modifier, but like this you will learn how to make it yourself directly into the geometry node setup, just like that. So let's go with this, and that's it for this video. Into the next video we will just add some vegetation into that landscape.